Jack Weatherford's book, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, offers a reconsideration of the historical legacy of the famed 12th century ruler Genghis Khan. Weatherford complements oversimplified caricatures that represent the Mongolian warlord as little more than a barbarian. In fact, little is known about Genghis Khan, despite the fact that he and his fellow tribesmen ruled a vast empire. The Mongols lived pressed against the Henti mountain range between the steppe and the Siberian forest. One day, a girl from the Merkid clan was kidnapped on the steppe by a man from the Mongolian Borogin tribe. He married her, and she gave birth to their son, Temujin, in 1162. Years later, upon being elected king of the Mongols, Temujin would rename himself Genghis Khan, literally meaning strong king. In 1171, Temujin met Borta, a girl from another tribe, and a marriage was arranged. He stayed with her family until his father's death compelled him to return to his own family. The clan saw no further use in keeping Temujin's family, who ranked as inferior in their hierarchy. They abandoned the family, who had to fend for themselves in extreme poverty. Temujin quickly became irritated by his older half-brother Begtur's authoritative attitude, so he murdered him with the help of his younger brother. In 1178, aged 16, Temujin returned to claim his wife, Borta. In need of tribal support, he won the favor of Ong Kong, his father's friend. Ong Kong, who led the powerful Hariad tribe, decided to confer protection over Temujin. Still seeking vengeance for the kidnapping of Temujin's mother, Ailun, the Merkid tribe kidnapped Borta. Temujin eluded the Merkid kidnappers. After seeking spiritual approval at the foot of Burkhan Khaldun Mountain, Temujin sought Ong Khan's assistance. Ong Khan helped launch a successful raid against the Merkids, and Temujin got his wife back. Ong Khan had also enlisted further help from Jamukha, a childhood friend of Temujin's who had grown powerful. The two took a new friendship oath before merging their clans and becoming co-leaders. As time passed, Jamukha worked to undermine Temujin's authority by claiming to be of more noble descent, prompting Temujin to split from Jamukha's clan. Jamukha then became Temujin's greatest rival. Years later, when Jamukha was captured by Temujin, he demanded to be put to death, rather than form a new allegiance with his old friend. Temujin resolved to unite the Mongol tribes and become their leader. Eager to curb the cycle of incessant reprisals that governed steppe life, and in order to build the tribes into an empire, he enforced a new order based on loyalty, not lineage. Aristocrats were no longer protected by wealth or prestige. Additionally, while conquered folk had previously been able to flee, return later, and fight the raiders, Temujin ordered that clan members be rounded up before the looting. Loot was no longer to be distributed based on lineage, but rather on military rank. This signaled Temujin's evolving meritocratic ideology, which would further secure the loyalty of his growing number of conquered subjects. Although he killed off aristocrats and civilians he did not value, Temujin offered surviving enemy clan members the possibility to fully integrate into his own tribe. As he rose in rank, Temujin began to doubt the loyalty of his mentor, Ong Khan. To test his protector's allegiance, he asked to marry his son Zaichi to Ong Khan's daughter. Ong Khan agreed, but only as a ploy to kill Temujin's entire family. Only a few survived. After this betrayal, Temujin went on to defeat Ong Khan's Hariad clan, as well as the Naiman clan, another important steppe tribe. In 1206, Temujin was proclaimed Great Khan of the Mongolians, opting for the title Genghis Khan, better known in its Persian incarnation, Genghis Khan. Having adopted a successful martial strategy, he now instituted a set of new laws that focused on minimizing strife among his followers. He promoted a society that tolerated all religions and ensured tax exemptions for religious leaders and those who performed public ceremonies. The imposition of a general law motivated Genghis Khan to adopt a writing system for record-keeping. Because he understood the necessity of communication to empire expansion, he developed a postal system with stations across the steppe. Conquests begot further conquests, leading to the Mongolians' control of trade routes that linked Chinese and Muslim civilizations. When Genghis Khan's death became imminent, the family convened to decide on who would take up the leadership position. After much dissent, they agreed that Ogedei, the third of the leader's 4 sons, should become Great Khan. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, Ogedei established the Mongol capital, Karakorum, in direct opposition to his father's anti-urban inclinations. To enhance trade, he developed a universal system of measurement and weighting, as well as a paper currency. But by 1235, Ogedei had squandered most of his wealth. Since his people didn't produce assets themselves, they needed to raid more land to acquire goods. The Mongols divided into 2 factions, an audacious 2-front strategy enacted on a scale that would not be repeated until World War II. One flank planned to conquer the Sung area, south of Mongolia in southern China. The other, led by Khan Batu, the son of Zaichi, successfully conquered Eastern Europe. All 4 of Genghis Khan's sons had died by the end of 1241. From 1241 to 1251, Temujin, one of Ogedei's widows, ruled the Mongolian Empire alongside a group of other women, mostly Christians with no Mongolian heritage. Each attempted to control the entire empire and bequeath it to her son. Christianity would in fact become an important part of the Mongol court. Temujin obtained her son Gayuk's election as successor to Ogedei. Gayuk was succeeded by Möngke, the son of Genghis Khan's youngest son, Tolyu. Möngke was deeply influenced by Christian aesthetics and enlisted the skills of a Parisian goldsmith, Guillaume Boucher, to add European flair to the architecture of the Mongolian capital, Karakorum. Assyrian, Armenian, and Orthodox Christianity gained a privileged position over other religions in Möngke's court, though Catholicism did not. During this time, the Mongols even celebrated Christmas. Möngke was the last great Khan to be recognized as leader by the entire Mongolian Empire. He died in 1259. The youngest of Tolyu's sons, Arik Boka, briefly enjoyed tenure as Great Khan before his brother, Kubilai, pulled off a successful coup. Through a 20-year campaign, Kubilai helped bring about the unification of China, adopting Chinese culture himself and converting to Buddhism. Thanks to his military superiority, his use of propaganda, and his political savvy, Kubilai was able to install a disciplined government whose center was the former capital of Yurchid. This was Zhengdu, which would one day become Beijing. However, Kubilai remained Mongolian first and foremost. He constructed a forbidden city within Zhengdu, where he and the royal family could observe and enjoy Mongolian customs, sheltered from foreign eyes. The different Mongolian factions, though divided on a political level, continued to rely on trade in order to procure goods. Throughout the early 14th century, the empire secured and strengthened commercial routes, creating detailed maps and expanding canals. The regime innovated in areas that stretched across astronomy, mathematics, history, and the printing press, which in turn influenced European technology and propitiated the innovations, discoveries, and cultural exchanges that marked the Renaissance. Late in the first half of the 14th century, the bubonic plague beset South China, spreading west through the many commerce routes developed by the Mongolians. With the breakdown of trade routes, the system was paralyzed and began to disintegrate. Isolated from each other, the Mongolian rulers had little military power or trade leverage to keep their subjects in check. In Persia, Russia, and China, Mongolian rule crumbled. From the 18th century onward, the Mongolians became the object of a protracted smear campaign. Revisionist accounts, such as those authored by French Enlightenment intellectuals, depicted the Mongolians as inferior barbarians. While the Mongols were ruthless in their conquests, as when they filled moats with enemy civilians and used human shields in battle, they did not torture their captives gratuitously through techniques such as quartering or burning at the stake, which had been commonplace in medieval Europe. Various scientific treatises throughout the 19th and 20th centuries argued that children whose faces had Mongolian traits were subhuman because they were the vestigial products of rapes committed by Mongolian raiders on Caucasian women in the 14th century. The 20th century saw the persecution of Mongolians and the denouncing of their hero Genghis Khan by Communist Russia, which was bent on repressing the possibility of any revolutionary spark from within the Asian continent. While a generation of scholars was silenced by the Soviet regime, the same repression encouraged individual scholars to uncover the truth about the Mongolian leader, often to their great peril. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Genghis Khan's native land opened to experts, and with it the secrets and travails of one of the world's most infamous conquerors. Character analysis. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is a historical figure whose identity is shrouded in mystery and conjecture. Scholars continue to disagree about when Temujin adopted the name Genghis Khan. In Genghis Khan and the Mongol War Machine, Chris Pierce insists that the precise moment when Temujin adopted the title of Genghis Khan is unknown. The origin of the name Genghis Khan likewise sparks debate. The name could come from the word Ching, which means strong. This is Weatherford's interpretation. But Genghis could instead refer to Tengiz, which means oceanic and universal. Genghis Khan's policies of imperial expansion display an extraordinary aptness for seizing moments of opportunity in order to transform the world. As Pierce observes, Genghis Khan did not have a traditional tribal base due to his father's death. He was, therefore, free to organize his empire from the ground up. Reared on the harsh northern steppes, he appears to have had an uncommonly intense desire to change the world rather than be changed by it. Perhaps because he thought he had been conferred a divine mandate, Genghis Khan had a strong belief in the need to seize the moment. Without this belief in a heavenly investiture, Genghis Khan may have otherwise succumbed and died at an early age, given the many hardships he had to endure. Scholar Michael Hope has taken a different view of Genghis Khan's story, arguing that Temujin's rapid rise to power resulted from his father Yasuge's aristocratic lineage. Yasuge had wielded considerable power among the Mongols because of his nobility, Hope explains, and upon his death, his followers elected to follow Temujin. Due to the lack of available documentation about his life, Genghis Khan has become a cipher whose living contradictions have sometimes been resolved in favor of selective depictions of his life that paint him, for instance, as a cruel and ruthless barbarian. Although his battle tactics, which included using bodies of civilians as human shields, may still seem disturbing and cruel, many of his policies, such as legislation against animal theft and adultery, were progressive for their time. Borta. Borta, the first of Genghis Khan's wives, came from Han Girad. Unlike Genghis Khan's tribe, known for its use of force, the Han Girad clan were known to rely on their women. Originating from a matriarchal tribe, Borta was accustomed to rearing her own children, rather than having a servant do so for her. Relationships. Jamukha and Genghis Khan. The nature of friendship in Genghis Khan's society was very different from the contemporary Western understanding. Today, Jamukha and Genghis Khan's oath of friendship might be read as having amorous or erotic connotations, since they slept under the same blanket and drank each other's blood. In modern Western society, most friendships do not exhibit such ritual and ceremonial solemnity. The nature of Jamukha's alliance with Genghis Khan signals how intimate friendship could be in 13th century Mongolia. Nomadic culture was also defined by sudden upheavals and power reversals that could undo a tribe or friendship at any moment. With Jamukha, Genghis Khan experienced both deep friendship and its sudden reversal. Borta, Ailun, and Genghis Khan. In folklore and in fact, wives and mothers have a hand in the decisiveness of their male counterparts. Although they sometimes operate from the wings, their influence and power are undeniable. Little information survives on Genghis Khan's 4 wives and mother, but their prominent position within the Mongolian hierarchy and empire suggests that he relied greatly on their resolve and support. Genghis Khan's relationships with Ailun and Borta in particular were not determined by matters of state, but by love. He had chosen Borta as his wife when they were young, and Elun was his mother. Beyond the dictates of survival that governed life on the steppe and the requirements of a patriarchal hierarchy, Genghis Khan may have begun his career in conquest to secure the safety of his family, the basis of which resided in his relationship with his mother and his first wife. Themes: Religion and cult. Michael Hope notes that Genghis Khan claimed his authority derived from Monke Tengeri, or eternal heaven, the loftiest among many spiritual entities. Monke Tengeri held power over people's fates, and Genghis Khan used this widespread belief in order to secure his legitimacy as the leader of the Mongolian Empire. According to Hope, Genghis Khan also claimed divine investiture as a way of persuading followers and would-be followers to override traditional obligations in favor of loyalty to him. Brian Bauman underscores the importance of the eternal heaven to the Mongolian people by observing that the Mongols knew that their legitimacy as imperial rulers relied on their privileged bond to it. This explains why Genghis Khan and his followers developed ever more sophisticated technologies for interpreting astral signs, along with sophisticated allegorical tropes that were related to the sky and the stars. Bauman additionally notes that the eternal heaven was not a moral arbitrator, but simply the decider of all things at any given time, regardless of their ethical import. An example of the sky's all-encompassing symbolic importance is evidenced by the murder of Genghis Khan's influential shaman Teb Tengeri, or Heaven's Reporter. This man had a privileged relationship with Monke Tengeri, but after his killing, his tent's smoke hole was covered up to indicate that his ability to communicate with Monke Tengeri had been broken. The Mongols attributed their successes to heavenly favor, but their consistent excellence in battle and conquest cannot be explained away as the whims of the eternal heaven. A detailed plan was first drawn up before being vetted by heaven. War. In Genghis Khan and the Mongol War Machine, Chris Piers observes that twice a year, in summer and in winter, the nomads conducted mass migrations that required disciplined cooperation in order to ward off potential enemies. These mass movements trained the nomads in the art of warfare. Indeed, for Genghis Khan's dynasty, war was of the utmost importance. Temujin's roots were in a nomadic culture whose lifestyle was first and foremost a militaristic one. The Mongolians innovated in the art of warfare. The military formation they developed followed a decimal system. Groups of 10 were grouped by 10. These groups of 100, called zaguns, were again grouped by 10, forming mingans. Mingans were also grouped by 10, forming a tumen. Within this decimal hierarchy, which predated Genghis Khan, the Mongolian leader's bodyguards held a particular and privileged position. These individuals, often close to Genghis Khan, held high ranks within the empire. The empire's impressive military structure relied on complex martial strategies, powerful weapons, and an army of sturdy steeds. The main weapon used by Mongolian warriors was the bow, which was made from glue, horn, and sinew wrapped around wood. While such a bow is more difficult to make than a simple wooden bow, it offers certain advantages, such as a higher arrow speed. Another important asset of the Mongolians was their horses, as evidenced by the fact that Genghis Khan went so far as to impose the death penalty for anyone who harmed a horse. Horses needed to be well fed before going into battle, and scholars have argued that some of the Mongols' defeats were caused by malnourished steeds. Horses were essential to multiple front battles, as they enabled swift communication between armies located hundreds of miles apart. Such fighting required a strict schedule and great coordination. Kinship and aristocracy. Kinship was not just a fact of life in Mongol culture, but also an imperial strategy. Mentioning a family tie was a performative act that could lead to either the inclusion or exclusion of someone from the clan. Genghis Khan and Jamaka's absorption of each other's blood, for instance, was a performative ritual that symbolized the exchange of a part of their souls. This was meant to indicate their strengthened kinship ties. Crucially, Symbolic exchanges such as this one were reversible and indefinite on the steppe. An allegiance could quickly turn into a rivalry, while the power of words did not have any permanence. While symbolic exchanges were an important part of Mongolian life, David Sneath shows that nomadic tribes also had a stratified organization that put power in the hands of the aristocracy that predated Genghis Khan's rise to power. In fact, Sneath writes, "The Secret History of the Mongols, a manuscript that purports to be a history of the empire, seldom provides a commoner's perspective. Sneath's argument is that by privileging certain genealogies, the Mongolian Empire was not so different from class-based states as one may think. Other scholars agree that the rise of the Mongolian Empire marked a slow conversion from a symbolic and aristocratic order to an order governed by wealth accumulation." Allegory. Various studies have set out to dispel the idea that the Mongols were merely a primitive horde, a perception that results from literalist interpretations of the culture. Brian Bauman makes a point of noting that Mongolian culture relied heavily on sophisticated allegorical tropes that find echoes in Turkish and Chinese culture, among others. The Mongols developed a cult of animals that included fictional creatures such as phoenixes, as well as animals that did not exist within native Mongolian terrain, such as peacocks. These animals, Bauman argues, had a significance beyond their real embodiments, serving as symbols with celestial significance. Important people. Temujin was the man who founded the Mongolian Empire and became known as Genghis Khan. Jack Weatherford is a cultural anthropologist who studied Genghis Khan for many years. Minhaj al-Siraj Huzjani was a Persian chronicler. Atta Malik Huvayni was a Persian chronicler. Eylun was a young kidnapped girl who gave birth to Genghis Khan. Yesugei was the young man who kidnapped Eylun. He belonged to the Mongol tribe. Begtur was Genghis Khan's older brother, born of Yesugei's first wife, Sachagel. Jamukha was a member of the Jadaran clan who became close friends with Genghis Khan. Borta was Genghis Khan's first wife. Ung Khan, also known as Torgil, was the Khan or leader of the Heriad tribe. Timur was a late 14th century Turkic leader who purported to be descended from Genghis Khan. Author's style. Along with a team that included a geographer, a political scientist, a Communist Party researcher, and an archaeologist, cultural anthropologist Jack Weatherford conducted years of field research that began in 1990 in the Ik-Korig, Genghis Khan's native land. The area had been closed to foreigners for centuries. Weatherford's primary source of information is The Secret History of the Mongols, a fabled manuscript uncovered in Beijing in the 19th century and presumably written by Mongols shortly after Genghis Khan's death. The research team analyzed the Mongolian topography as a way of verifying the claims of a variety of primary and secondary sources, including The Secret History. Although the author claims that, unlike written accounts, real locations always reveal the truth, the assertion avoids the possibility that even places must be interpreted. Weatherford clearly holds a deep appreciation of his object of study, and his fondness for the famed Mongolian leader is infectious. After the ruler's death in the middle of Weatherford's text, his absence can be felt through the rest of the narrative, attesting to Weatherford's ability to bring him to life. He paints a subtly positive portrait of Genghis Khan, dwelling less on his rapacious sexuality and the cruelty of his conquests than other historians have done. These elements are not elided, but are only modestly developed, in keeping with the results of the research. With frequent asides to remind the reader of the largely conjectural nature of the narrative, Weatherford manages to construct a nuanced and careful examination of a story laden with myth and lore. An extensive list of references appends the text. The story of Genghis Khan is one of constant motion through different Eurasian spaces conquered one after the next. This geographical component is vividly rendered by Weatherford. Beyond the inclusion of helpful maps of the conquered regions and how they were parceled out, Weatherford is able to accurately and clearly describe in his writing the positions and movements of Khan and his followers throughout Eurasia. The experience he acquired in the steppe during his field research and his interactions with locals gave him insights into details of nomadic life and a thorough understanding of the region's topography and climate. Rather than embracing a pessimistic, oversimplified, and shallow point of view, the riddle of Genghis Khan's life can provoke inspiration stemming from his more open-ended and tolerant maneuvers. The possibilities regarding Khan's emotional and intellectual journey are multiplied once they are freed from the restrictive yoke of propaganda. Whereas others have indulged in excessive dramatization of Genghis Khan's conquests, transforming him into a two-dimensional villain, attending to the small and intimate moments in Genghis Khan's life allows Weatherford to infuse his story with the relatable details of what his day-to-day life might have been like. Weatherford's sympathetic, yet open and objective rendering of Genghis Khan's life does not presume to be scientific and cannot be fully accurate, yet his approach contributes to rectifying the historical bias against the leader of the Mongolian Empire.